Lancaster City Council Finance Committee meeting for June 12th, 2023 at 6 p.m. The first item on our agenda is Resolution 6623, a resolution authorizing the Safety Service Director to enter into an engineering agreement for engineering design for the concentrate line upgrades. This is coming out of wastewater. Mr. James.
Thank you, Chairman McDaniel. I would like to invite Ms. Denise Cruz to the podium to give us a little more detail on this particular resolution.
Good evening. So we have been, seems like forever, the last 3 years trying to figure out what to do with the concentrate lighting from the South Water Plant. We've done some cleaning, we've done some testing, we've done some engineering on it, and we finally come up with a solution. So this resolution will allow the Service Safety Director to enter into a contract with Arcadis to design 2 of the fixes that we need. Another fix will be adding acid, and that's something that we can do in-house. What this involves is adding booster pumps at the South Water Plant to increase the pressure in the line so that we don't get things falling out of the concentrate, and plugging the line. And then the second thing is to extend the piping at Canal and Maple Street so that the elevation matches the top of White Hill, and that will eliminate us getting
Air bubble.
a different kind of deposition in the pipe, and it's related to the hydraulics of the system. This is a relatively quick project, so we hope to be ready to go out to bid at the end of the year.
Any questions for Denise? Mr. James, what's your pleasure?
Thank you, Denise. We would like to, we're going to ask for 2 readings on this particular one, and Ms. Tina will be my second on this resolution.
Two readings, and Mrs. Teener will be the second. Next item on our agenda is Resolution 6723, a resolution authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into construction contracts for the Lateral D Trunk Sewer Phase 2 and the Campground Road Pump Station and Force Main. Wastewater, Mr. James.
Thank you again, Chairman McDaniel. As you can see, Ms. Denise Cruz didn't even bother sitting down, so go ahead, Denise.
This resolution authorizes the Service Safety Director to enter into construction projects. After a lot of back and forth, we finally did get bids for both the Lateral D sewer extension to Mill Park Drive and for the replacement pump station at Campground Road. Unfortunately, the costs were not favorable, so we're asking for $25 million. That will include our contingencies for change orders. This is being funded by a loan from the Ohio Water Development Authority, and we need to submit our bids and contracts to Ohio EPA at the beginning of July for an August loan.
Any questions? Mr. James, what's your pleasure?
Yes, we will once again ask for 2 readings on this, given some of the critical time schedules, and Mr. Matlin will be my second on this.
2 readings, and Mr. Matlin is the second.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda is Resolution 6823, a resolution approving the City of Lancaster's fiscal year 2023 Community Development Block Grant Annual Action Plan and Statement of Objectives, and authorizing their submission to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development coming out of Economic Development. Mr. Ailes.
Linda's going to address the issue.
Good evening. This is our annual allocation of Community Development Block Grant funds from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Nothing particularly new. About this year's recommendations. Excuse me. I've passed out a sheet with the listing of our recommendations, and I'll just go through it briefly. Should be making its way around. The numbers are not different from what is in the legislation. It's just laid out a little bit differently. So we have internal programs for housing renovation, and we now have funds available for homeowners who meet the income qualifications and for rental housing with residents who meet the income guidelines. We have match money from CDBG for our lead hazard control program and our Healthy Homes program. And both of those programs are available for homeowners and for rentals. And then for our external programs, we're funding Habitat for Humanity, part of one of their new builds. The Center for Disabilities, they build ramps for folks who need accessible ramps. And then we have housing services. So those are grants for our emergency housing nonprofits that provide shelter, and that's for them to pay for their staff for the shelter. So that's Community Action for the family shelter, Lutheran Social Services for their emergency shelter, the Lighthouse for shelter for emergency shelter for domestic violence victims, and then Fairfield 211, they do a variety of housing services with the folks that they have, taking calls and referring people to housing services. And then New Horizons provides funding for folks for their clients for security deposits, rent, so that they don't become homeless. So that's a homelessness prevention program. So I laid it out for you in this way to show you the total for our internal programs, how much is spent on administration and fair housing, then how much is spent on internal housing programs, 55%, on our external housing programs, 9%, and on the housing services, 15%. As an aside, we're capped on that 15%, so we can use CDBG funds for direct housing, so that's our housing renovation programs, that's new construction, that's the ramps that the Center for Disabilities provides. But in terms of those housing services, paying for staff at shelters and those kinds of activities, that's limited to 15% of our allocation. That's how we come up with that number. The administration and planning is capped at 20% of our allocation. That's how we come up with that number. And right now, we spend a lot on internal housing programs because we want to make those dollars available for housing renovation, both for homeowners and for rentals. I am a big fan of nonprofits doing affordable housing development. And so to the extent that our nonprofits in town can take that on and can take more of that on in the future, I would like to see more of this money going to them and us passing that through on to our nonprofits, as opposed to our doing it all, doing so much internally. So I just wanted to give a little bit of that, give a little bit of background. But as you see, really all of our CDBG funds we're recommending be used for housing. It's either direct housing for renovation through our office or through the nonprofits that are doing it, or when it comes to the public service activity, it's all housing services. And that's because we have such a dire need for affordable housing and for emergency shelter. And also to say that 100% of our funds we're recommending be used for a low and moderate income benefit. We're only required to use 70% of our CDBG funds for a low moderate income benefit, just so you know, but we've been using it for many years at 100%.
Questions?
Community input, would you describe how you got that? I don't know that anyone knows that but me, but
Oh, yeah.
I want to give you the opportunity to describe how you came up with this list.
Thank you. Thanks for that opportunity. So I do have one-on-one meetings with all of our community partners, all of these nonprofit organizations, and then we also have a community development department advisory committee. We call them the All-Stars, and that is comprised of, we have 2 neighborhood residents, and then we also have community leaders from across the community, and so they help us make these decisions.
Anyone else?
We also take it to the Economic Development Committee. So that's kind of the vetting process is we have our community partners. We internally as a department have conversations. We do take applications for the external funds for any of the community partners that want to apply for this, for these funds. We take applications Then we have reviewed by our advisory committee, then it goes to the Economic Development Committee, and now it comes here. We also have 2 public hearings. We've already held them, so the past couple of years, we've had a public hearing here at City Council, but we went back to our process of having them at City Hall, and then we bring it here to you to City Council.
Thank you.
And I'm always open to suggestions by City Council, suggestions from the community, from anyone who wants to see, who's interested in how these decisions get made, who's interested in what activities are eligible for CDBG. And what I like to tell people is that we cannot make funding decisions quickly. We cannot turn this ship on a dime. It takes some time. But right now, we're developing our plan for the next 5 years, and I'm telling people, if you have an idea or you think that CDBG funds should be spent in a different way or something that you'd like to see, let us know, because we can put it in that 5-year plan. And it may take us a minute to get there to be able to spend the funds in that way, but we're certainly open to it. Yes.
Can you talk about the 2 meetings you'll have in June at the library?
Oh, yes. So we do a Community Development 101. It's kind of an open opportunity to talk about what we do in our department, but also to get residents involved in the city and what we do at City Hall. So once a month, we have one during the day at 11 o'clock, and then we'll do another one the next day at 6 o'clock in the evening. And they're published on our webpage and then also on the library's calendar. And I don't have those dates off the top of my head of when we're doing it, but
One's, I think, the last Tuesday in June.
I think
and
it's,
then
yeah, June 27th.
And then is it this Thursday or something like that, I think? at the
Right, so they're
library.
coming up in the next couple weeks. And Erica Todd of our Code Enforcement Department is our guest speaker. So we do an overview, like I said, of our department and of City Council. We show everyone in attendance finds out who their council member is, how to find that on the website, how to find out what ward they live in, who their representative is, that you all are available by phone, by email. And then we go through what we have available in our department, but then we've also had guest speakers. So the mayor has been a guest speaker, Paul has been a guest speaker, Erica Todd is our guest speaker this month. And if any of you are available, Mr. James has attended before, would love to have you attend. Yes?
One other quick question. We go to church in Baltimore, and there's a group up there called Good Neighbors in the Village that have built a lot of ramps and things, but we've had trouble getting enough funding for some of the wood and things. We've even torn down some old ramps to reuse that. Can you use volunteer help here in town to do that?
I believe that the Center for Disabilities does use volunteers, so our funds go exclusively to materials. And then they do take down ramps if no one is no longer needing it, then they'll take it down and rebuild it. I've also talked to them about the potential of aluminum ramps that can be installed temporarily and then removed, and just having an inventory of aluminum ramps.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
thanks.
Any other questions? All right. Mr. Ailes, what's your pleasure?
First of 3 readings, and Mr. Schoonover is the second on this.
Mr. Schoonover, and 3 readings on 6823. The next item on our agenda is Resolution 6923, a resolution to appropriate from the unencumbered balance and amend the certificate with the county auditor in the general fund for the Chestnut Street parking lot project. Mr. Martin, do you want to speak about this?
So you have third reading tonight, approving us to go out to bid for this project. It's the parking lot in between the police department and the annex building, plus some of the parking lots around those buildings. So it's a major project. We've finally got that engineered out. This is the funding portion of that. And so we're asking for you to not only approve us to go out to bid for this project tonight, but also to give this into our funding. 2 readings would work great. We'd like to, once we award somebody, we'd like to be able to get the purchase order and go out to bid, go out under contract with them as soon as possible.
So this is the companion piece to 5823, as Director Martin referred to, which has third reading tonight. The estimated cost the cost is not to exceed $450,000. And if you're familiar with this parking lot, there's some failures there along the wall, and they have been that way for some time, to the point where I think there is a risk of, further erosion of that wall in that area. We've had, several of those spots taken out of service because bricks falling. I mentioned this before, but this parking lot, a portion of it was a parking lot for some time, and the other portion was a building that was taken down. And when they took the building down, they essentially paved an area and started parking on it. Well, it collapsed at some point. It was never engineered properly. It was never really meant to be a parking lot. It became a parking lot out of necessity. So this is a rather expensive upgrade, but if you look at the engineering and the plan, I think it's necessary to reinforce that wall. And it's a two-level area, isn't it, Director, where you have
Yes,
to kind of...
so we're designing a little bit different to where this primary wall that you're referring to, we're gonna go without that wall because that was quite expensive, which would have been this project a little bit more, and we're going with a slight slope, so we don't have that wall. The retaining wall that we will have was to shore up the alley, because the alley does drive down through there. And we will not have an access to the alley from this parking lot in the future. It'll be in 1A and out the other. And so, as parking is a premium, so I think we lose maybe one parking spot, but we try to do the best we can. It was before the BZA today, and they approved the variance that we needed for a parking issue that we had there. But I think you'll be proud. We're gonna improve the appearance of this parking lot on Chestnut. If you know what it looks like right now, you will welcome any improvement of what we have there right now. It'll actually improve a little bit on the alley as well. So I think you'll be proud of the project if you approve this and allow us to move forward with it.
Well, and I'll add that I spoke with our city engineer, Mr. Schonk. He advised me that he has had some interested parties that expressed the desire to bid on this project. Not absolutely certain they will, but he's hopeful. And he was also hopeful that the price could be quite a bit lower than what is here. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. As you know, we always are concerned about going out to bid, even getting bidders, but we're gonna try, see what happens.
But we're hopeful that he's right on that, being lower cost than what's estimated here. Are there any additional questions on 6923? So we will have two readings. Again, we're up for a vote tonight is 5823, and then this will be the funding portion, 6923. Two readings, and Mrs. Kreis will be the second on that.
Yes.
Thank you. The next item we have on the agenda is Resolution 7023, a resolution authorizing the Safety Service Director to enter into a contract for professional design services, construction, bid preparation, and construction inspection services for the Lancaster Police Department's HVAC replacement project and to declare an emergency. This is coming out of safety, Mr. Matlin.
Chief Snyder's here to talk about this. This is the ongoing HVAC issue that the police department has had for a year and a half now, probably, so. Chief?
Good evening. Mr. Matlin is correct. Ongoing HVAC problem. The major hurdle that we have with this particular project is we received no bidders to even get the thing designed, let alone bid to construct. The good news is we have an engineering firm that is interested in doing that portion. It's just we were not able to conjure up any interest on our, when we put out the RFQ. So what I'm asking is that we forego the RFQ phase, enter into the agreement with an engineering firm. We are already budgeted for that, approved in the budget for that. We're approved in the budget for the HVAC project as a whole, but we can't get anywhere without getting a designer in here. So I'm fully confident the engineering firm that we're gonna enter into a contract with will get this thing rolling very quickly. They have extensive contacts with many businesses that when we do go out to bid to get this thing built, there's no doubt in my mind it will be in fast forward. But right now we're creeping into summer 2 of it being down, and I can't waste any more time on the project. We've got to get it fixed.
Any questions for Chief Snyder? I think we're all fully aware of this situation, and it's something that we need to act on as quickly as possible, really.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Matlin, what's your pleasure on that?
I'm gonna ask for suspension tonight, as this was a budgeted item, the money's there, and we've been trying to get it fixed. I really don't think there's any hope to get it fixed this year, but if we can get it going, then hopefully by next spring, we can have something going. I think Mr. James is gonna second that.
That's great. Mr. James, second, and we'll ask for suspension. All right, are there any departmental updates?
Good evening again. A few quick updates. There have been some more prominent things that have occurred at the police department over the last month or so. The main thing that we always talk about, hiring. We are actually on an upward trajectory for hiring, which is just unheard of in Central Ohio area, or really nationwide, and very excited for that. We're at 69 sworn officers right now. We have 24 in the pipe off of a new test, and the good news on that is we know that there's at least 3 to 4 people on that test that took our test on purpose. They want to work for the Lancaster Police Department, which is always a big deal when you're doing that. As you know, the authorized staffing level is 75. There's no doubt in my mind, and I'm fully confident we can get to 75 by the end of the year with no unforeseen absences from our roster. Beyond that, we have a spring initiative that is going to turn into a summer initiative for enforcement. I know Mr. James, Mr. Ailes have talked to me about this before. At the beginning of May, we started a department-wide initiative of traffic enforcement. This is aside and adjacent to our typical enforcement activities, specifically for speeding, racing, street racing. I'm sure we're all familiar with that in our neighborhoods, as well as loud exhaust or modified exhaust. Everybody hears that as well out in the city. This is a completely separate initiative to the normal day-to-day traffic enforcement that our officers do. From May 2nd until current day, I believe we have 66 traffic citations written out of that and over 100 traffic stops written out of that initiative. A couple areas have already advised that at least the quality of life issue in their area is coming down. What I do want to caution the citizens of is our enforcement activity will help. However, I don't want to promise that it's going to solve this issue, because this issue is behavioral. If you want to modify your car or race, you're going to do that because you already know the risks involved. However, that doesn't mean we're going to stop our presence and not enforce. So that initiative is going very well. We have a high level of officer participation in that, and we're going to continue that throughout the summer. The last thing, I should let my limping up here do all the talking for me, but we're going to play the fire department on August 27th in a charity basketball game. And I won't do it here, but we'll push more information out on our Facebook and webpage later about that. And that'll be a really good event for the community to be involved in. And there's a lot of activities similar to our Kids and Cops program. It'll be a really good community event. I did say the last thing, but I do have one more. We completely revamped our website from head to toe. It looks completely different, feels completely different. 2 reasons for that. One, just for recruiting purposes. That's the first place that a recruit will go to see if they want to work for your agency. The second reason is ease of access for citizens. We have a fully functional online reporting system on the new website. So if you have a minor crime that you want to report, that's available on the website. A few new functions: you can comment on agency personnel. I can tell you since last week when it went live, I thought that was something that I may need to worry about a little bit with the amount of access. We've had 4 forms turned in to that regard, and they were all positive. 1 for a dispatcher and 3 for officers. So that's starting to take off well. You can also request records online, request an area watch in your neighborhood online, and look up your traffic report online. So there's a lot of things going on there. There's a recruiting page there that lists from head to toe how we do things at our agency, what our mission is, and it even allows recruits to interact online to turn their forms in when they're going through the background process. And we used to rely on the U.S. Postal Service. That usually backs you up 6 to 8 weeks, and this is doing an instant turnaround. So we're very excited about that. So if you get a chance, check out the website as well.
Thank you, Chief. Anybody have any questions for Chief Snyder? That's a good update. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other departmental updates? Any other departmental updates? All right, President Ohl for tonight meeting prep.
The only thing to note is the public hearing on temporary ordinance 1223, which Chairman McDaniel has noted on the agenda here for finance. And then in new business, we will have a new appointment to the TIRC, to the Tax Incentive Review Committee as well. And so that will occur under new business. That's all that I have under meeting prep.
Great, thank you. So, are there any other items for finance? I do have a couple of things. I just wanted, we have a couple pieces of tabled legislation. It was my intention to bring those off the table tonight and have us pass them or not. However, we have third reading on a funding piece of the legislation next meeting. It makes more sense to wait for that third reading, act upon everything at the next meeting. That's kind of what my thought is. We have the planning and zoning addition, and I guess I would ask the administration, is there any timing issue or concern with the health insurance portion of that? I
So
know.
I think we'll be fine right now. If it makes sense to do it next council.
Okay.
When you bring it off, and that timing will be just fine.
All right, thank you. So there is, it contained in one of the 5223 is we have an employee who's going from single health insurance to family health insurance because she's getting married. So that, if we don't pass that piece of legislation to add the planning and zoning, the zoning inspector, we're going to have to revisit that in another piece of legislation because we're going to be obligated to pay her health insurance. But I just wanted to throw that out there so everybody knew about it. And obviously, we have ordinance 1323 to add the tax auditor to the income tax department. That also will be waiting till next week, or next meeting, I should say. Again, I had originally planned to act on that tonight or bring them off the table tonight, but I decided I think it makes a lot of sense just to wait. Keep in mind that ordinance 1123 and 1323, 11 has the code enforcement, the zoning inspector in it, and 13 has both the tax auditor and the zoning inspector. So if we pass 13, 11 will become moot.
Yes.
So that's something to remember too. So we can act upon them next week. 13 will be a third reading. So if we act on that and whatever happens, we'll determine what we do with 11, which is on the table. Anybody have any questions on that? That's all I have. Is there any other items for finance? I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. It is 6:29.
The regular meeting of Lancaster City Council will begin at 6:35. Hey, Larry, quick second.
The Frankie Smith Funeral Home and Crematory in Lancaster and the Johnson Smith Funeral Home in Baltimore have a long and wonderful history of serving our community. Feel free to give us a call at 740-653-0652. Stop in and see us at either of our two locations, 405 North Columbus Street in Lancaster and 207 South Main Street in Baltimore. Respect for tradition, regard for change.
Hi, I'm Julia Hilty with AHA here in Lancaster. AHA is a children's museum that surrounds children and the adults in their lives with a hands-on, interactive, playful, and educational environment featuring over 60 exhibits. This month, we are honored to be chosen by the Buckeye Automotive Family's Buckeye Cares program. Buckeye Cares will make a generous donation with every car they sell. From all of us at AHA, we say thank you, Buckeye, for helping us help our kids.
justice for all. Thank you. Please call the roll.
Mr. Ayers?
Here.
Mr. Ailes?
Here.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Here.
Mr. James?
Here.
Mr. Matlin?
Here.
Mr. McDaniel?
Here.
Mr. Porter?
Here.
Mr. Schoonover?
Here.
And Mrs. Teener?
Here.
Let the record reflect that all 9 members of Lancaster City Council are in attendance this evening. Reading and disposing of the journal.
I'd like to present the regular meeting minutes dated May 22nd, 2023.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the journal.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file the journal. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Reports of city officials.
Email dated June 1st, 2023 regarding regarding June 21st Turk meeting submitted by Law Director Stephanie Hall. Email dated June 7th, 2023 regarding Public Works agenda submitted by Mr. Schoonover. Email dated June 12th, 2023 regarding the Finance Committee agenda submitted by Mr. McDaniel. And finally, an email dated June 12th, 2023 regarding the cancellation of the June 16th IT Telecom Committee meeting submitted by Mrs. Teener.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the reports of city officials.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to receive and file reports of city officials. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Do we have any communications?
There are none to be presented.
Do we have any special presentations or awards this evening?
There are none to be
Do we
presented.
have any petitions or memorials?
There are none to be presented.
During this time, Lancaster City Council sets time aside to allow the voters and taxpayers of the city to address City Council on any item or issue you would like. If you'd like to address Lancaster City Council, we invite you to come to the podium. Sign in with a green clipboard and then state your name and address for the record. Is there anyone who would like to address Lancaster City Council this evening? I will make note that this time is different than the public hearing that we are getting ready to undertake in just a few moments. If you'd like to speak during the public hearing, you'll have opportunity to do that on the temporary ordinance. Otherwise, as we see one coming, I'll note that during this time, Lancaster City Council members will not respond to any questions, though they may choose to do so at a later time during the meeting. Further, per the rules of council, we will ask that you keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. Please go ahead.
All right, thank you, Mr. President, members of council. Just something I want to bring to your attention, I know this is something that Councilman Tom James is also quite aware of as well, is the New Horizon Internet Company that's coming to River Valley Highlands and kind of been digging around and all that stuff. So far, it's personally impacted me. I know it's also personally impacted a lot of my neighbors as well in the neighborhood, where essentially what folks are waking up and finding out is they're finding out that, their property's been marked up, where water lines and gas lines are, and then a company called American Boring Company comes up and starts digging on their property. Now, granted, what I've learned is this is all well within the realm of the law, it's all legal and everything like that, but I know it's created a lot of frustration. It's created some frustration for me in terms of how I move around the neighborhood and how I do things to my property, but it's also created frustration for my neighbors as well. Essentially, what we're having here are folks, the internet company Horizon's digging and boring, trying to put down new internet lines because they're a new company in town, which is all well and good. But the issue is, though, is that this company is not providing any notice or anything like that, that they're going to be going on to people's property, going to be doing digging and boring, which has caused, like I said, a lot of frustration and consternation in the neighborhood. So, kind of just speaking from my perspective here, I think a good solution for this, there's not really much you can do now. I was fortunate enough to catch the foreman right before they started digging on my property and ask, hey, what's going on? Why is my property marked up? I have no idea what's going on. And he was able to hand me a letter where I was then properly educated as to what was going on, and everything was good from there. But I think something that, would be very helpful for residents is if something was passed requiring that some sort of communication be doled out to residents that would be impacted 24 hours before any kind of digging would occur. I think honestly something to alleviate this frustration is just plain old communication. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say on that subject.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Is there anyone else who'd like to address Lancaster City Council this evening? Yes, ma'am. Please come out. You can grab that clipboard and step aside, and you can begin your comments and sign in after the fact, ma'am.
Hi, my name's Christine North. I live at 239 King Street. The last couple years have been with neighbors that have bamboo. And, I know that I can't think of the department, but.
Code enforcement.
Code enforcement, thank you. Code enforcement did take steps to have them take the bamboo down. But that's not solving the problem, because what's happening is they're not taking care of the root system of what is in their yard. So consequently, it's traveling. I'm fighting a battle to get that bamboo under control. It is also now in the front of the house. So what's happening, this root system is traveling under my yard, it's traveling out front, it's certainly traveling out front that it's gonna hit, eventually it will hit your city sewer septic system. Then it's gonna hit the neighbor on the other side, because I'm fighting this battle. And I have many pictures that I can show you. It is now, I have a lovely bamboo garden in my garage. And I came home to bamboo this tall coming through my deck. I'm really trying to fight it. I have a nephew that's been trying to help with the root system. The root systems are really big. But I'm trying my hardest to get it under control, but they've taken it down because they've been forced to take it down, but they're not doing anything further than that. They're only doing what they were told to do. And unfortunately, Lancaster doesn't have an ordinance for this. Now, Worthington, I'm in 3rd Ward, I showed Jack Matlin, I pulled off the ordinance that Worthington has and what they do there, because people can have bamboo, but it's so evasive, and if they don't maintain it in their yard, they get fined. And I don't know what to do, because these people don't feel it's a problem. Well, it is a problem, because it's invading my yard and my space, and it's ruining my deck. It's obviously not good on the foundation of my garage, and I already know what it's doing to the underneath of my house. So I wanted to come today and kind of, let you know my distress on it, because I'm just to the point now I don't know what else to do. So, that's it.
Thank you very much. Yeah, please make sure you sign in there. Is there anyone else who would like to address Lancaster City Council this evening? Well, thank each of you for being here tonight. Are there reports of standing committees?
I apologize. There's 3. Safety Committee meeting dated May 22nd, 2023, submitted by Mr. Matlin. Economic Development Committee meeting minutes dated May 25th, 2023, submitted by Mr. McDaniel. And the Finance Committee meeting minutes dated June 12th, 2023, submitted by Mr. McDaniel.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the standing committee reports.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file reports of standing committees. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Are there reports of special committees?
There are none to be presented.
Tonight we have a public hearing on temporary ordinance 12-23. We will now enter into the public hearing portion of tonight's meeting. Let me quickly outline the rules of the public hearing for any of those who are here and may be interested in speaking for or against this legislation. During the public hearing, in just a moment, I'll ask that the clerk read the preamble of the legislation. Once that happens, I will turn it over to the sponsor of the legislation to provide any opening comments they would like. Once that's finished, we will open this up to proponents of the legislation, those who are in favor of it. If you're in favor of the legislation and you wish to speak tonight, we ask that you come to the podium, sign in using the silver clipboard, not the green one, and state your name and address for the record. You may then begin your comments. What differs between a public hearing and the voter and taxpayer portion of City Council is that during this time, City Council may ask you questions. So when you're finished with your comments, don't leave the podium. You may be cross-examined and ask questions as City Council has those for you tonight. Once the proponents of the legislation, those for it, have spoken, then we will open up and give opportunity for the opponents, those against the legislation, to speak. Once the opponents are done, we enter into the time of rebuttal. If anyone would like to, who is a proponent for the legislation, speak again, they may do so. Please note that in order to speak during the second round of proponents and opponents, you have to have spoken during the first round. So you cannot speak the second time unless you've spoken the first time. Once proponents have finished the second time, we'll allow opponents once again. We will turn it back to the sponsor and allow them to close down with any comments that they have. With that, we'll ask that the clerk read the preamble of the legislation.
An ordinance to authorize and designate a revitalization district within the city of Lancaster pursuant to Ohio Revised Code, section 4301.81, offered by Mr. Ailes.
Mr. Ailes, any opening comments?
Didn't know I was going to be asked to do this tonight, but I've been thinking about it a lot today, so I do have some comments. I've lived in Lancaster long enough to have seen the demise of downtown Lancaster and now the rebirth of downtown Lancaster, and I think it's remarkable. I never, ever thought that I would see this, and I am. So I'm very pleased with that. And I think, as a council, what we are obligated to do is anything we can do that this doesn't cost us money. They're not asking for anyone to come remodel their buildings or put in new sidewalks. They're saying, expand the revitalization district so that we can take advantage of everything that's there. So I personally am in favor of it. It's probably not the point that I should say that, but I am. And I would open the floor to comments.
Very good. With that, then, we will open the floor to proponents, those who are in favor of this legislation. Again, remember, as I see Ms. Everett coming toward the podium, that to speak the second time, you must speak the first time. Ms. Everett, you go ahead and begin your comments and sign in after the fact if you would like.
Thank you. Thank you, Council. Just to add some extra points, first of all, thank you very much, Councilman Ailes. Downtown is thriving, and we have an opportunity now to expand this revitalization district to use up available inventory to act as an economic development tool and recruit restaurants. This would allow us to utilize the 13 available D5L liquor licenses, and those D5L liquor licenses function just like full D5 liquor licenses, of which we have 0 right now at last count for the city of Lancaster. The only difference being that 70% of their sales have to come from food. And so we aren't recruiting bars, we're recruiting restaurants. And I think that we could probably all agree that as we grow from a population perspective and as we become more vibrant and we're thriving as a community, we want more choices to eat in downtown Lancaster and in Lancaster as a whole. We have this opportunity within the downtown to expand the revitalization district and again recruit those restaurants and serve current business owners and property owners, that many of whom are here this evening, to assist them with their business. So this is an economic development tool, and I would be very grateful if we were able to pass it.
Thank you very much, Ms. Everett. Before you go, does anyone have any questions for Ms. Everett? Okay, very good. Thank you for being here. Are there other proponents, those in favor? Yes. Mr. Bennett, please come forward.
Hello, my name is Bob Bennett. Thanks again for letting me speak from 712 North High Street. So we own Bob's Backyard Barbecue right down here downtown, and we are very much happy about the revitalization district that we're beneficiaries of it, of the current one. In addition, I got a couple of my business partners here that we have opened up Tiberia's Pizza just up on 416 North Columbus, and this revitalization district will allow us to get a liquor license quicker and will help really with our success, and I believe that will help to recruit other businesses because they will see how well we're doing with that, and will continue to the economic expansion.
Very good.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Thanks for being here. If you don't mind to just sign in quickly there, and then if you step aside, I see Mr. Singer heading to the podium, so we can keep things moving if you just want to grab that. And Mr. Singer, you come on forward and you can begin your comments.
Okay.
Before you do, I failed to ask, does anyone have questions for Mr. Bennett? Okay, thank you again for being here. Mr. Singer.
Just want to say thank you, and I'm working on a piece of property on South Broad Street, just at the Hocking River. There is some development there. Dollar General, and there are several other lots there that I think this would be advantageous for. And the expansion of the Special Improvement District or this general area at some point in time, I think would be good for the community itself. So that's pretty much what I had to say about it.
Great, thank you, Mr. Singer. Please sign in. Anyone have questions for Mr. Singer?
Oh, by the way, if I could, one more thing.
Please.
The hole down there was for a detention pond, an underground or subterranean detention pond. So the mound of dirt that has created is a result of that, and there are several 100 tons of limestone for filter in that pond.
Very good. Thank you so much. All right. Mr. Bruce.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, council. Justin Bruce. I own Bruce Chiropractic at 422 North Columbus Street, which this would be part of the new district, as well as I am a realtor for Keller Williams Greater Columbus. I have a listing right now at 430 North Columbus, which is the perfect weddings building right there on Memorial Drive and 5th. We've had a little bit of a struggle with selling some commercial here lately, and I think that if we were to extend this district out there, make these liquor licenses available, we could attract a restaurant. It's a huge place, 7,000 square foot with a parking lot on each side. So I think that would be huge. And then as far as Tiberios is a neighbor of ours, so I would love to see them be able to get that liquor license too and give me something to do after work.
And here I thought you were going to tell me when I came to the chiropractor I was going to be able to get a beer along with it.
Never worked out the legalities of that yet.
All right. Anyone have questions for Mr. Bruce? All right, thank you for being here. Are there other proponents for this? Yes, Mr. Neuheiser. Got to be impressed. I know all these people's names, right? I mean, I'm impressed. Go ahead, sir.
Matt Neuheiser. I live at 132 North High Street. I'm not a business owner downtown, but I do live downtown. And one of the reasons my family and I did was because we wanted to take advantage of not only the businesses, but the recreation, the events. The expansion of the revitalization would be a great blessing to our family. And my 3 little kids, although they don't drink right now, yet, we benefit from that as a family, not just during the week, but on the weekends as well. So, thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Neuheiser. Please sign in. Other proponents for this legislation that would like to speak tonight? Any other proponents? Okay, then we will close that section or portion of the testimony down and ask for opponents, those who are opposed to this legislation. Is there anyone who would like to speak who is opposed to the legislation tonight? Anyone who's opposed? Okay, if not, then we will return to proponents. Is there any proponent who already spoke in the first round who would like to add anything to their comments tonight? Seeing no one going, there were no opponents, and so therefore we will bring this back to the sponsor and ask if he has any closing comments.
Just thank you all for coming. Good representation, appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Ailes. I concur. Thank you all for being here tonight and for speaking your mind and opinion with regard to this legislation. With that, we will close this public hearing tonight. We will now move on through the agenda, beginning with the reading of resolutions, the third reading of temporary resolution 55-23.
A resolution authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into an engineering agreement for construction administration, resident project representation, programming, and other construction services for the Lateral D Trunk Sewer Phase 2, the Campground Road Pump Station, and Forest Main, offered by Mr. James and seconded by Mr. Matlin.
Mr. James.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this time, I'd like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon our written record temporary resolution numbered 55-23.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 55-23. Any discussion, Mr. James?
Yes, as a reminder, this has to do with the contract administration of this particular development for the Lateral D sewer and also for the Campground Road pump station. This is in approximately $1.44 million that we will be authorizing for Arcadis to do the administration of this particular contract.
Thank you very much, Mr. James. Further discussion on the motion to pass? Please call the roll.
Mr. Ehlers?
Yes.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Porter?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Temporary Resolution 55-23 passes 9-0. Temporary Resolution 56-23.
A resolution authorizing the City of Lancaster to apply for funding from the Ohio Department of Development, offered by Mr. Ailes and seconded by Mr. Schoonover.
Mr. Ailes.
Yes, Mr. President, I'd move that we pass and engross and enter upon the written record resolution temporarily numbered 56-23.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pass and engross and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 56-23. Any discussion, Mr. Ailes?
No.
Discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mr. Ayers?
Yes.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Porter?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Temporary Resolution 56-23 passes 9-0. Temporary Resolution 57-23 star.
A resolution authorizing the City of Lancaster Anti-Displacement and Relocation Assistance Plan, offered by Mr. Ailes and seconded by Mr. McDaniel.
Mr. Ailes.
Yes, Mr. President, I'd move that we pass and engross and enter upon the written record resolution temporarily numbered 57-23 star.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pass and engross and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 57-23 star. Discussion, Mr. Ailes.
It's a piece, it is part of 5623, and it's required as part of our application, so.
Very good, thank you, sir. Further discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mr. Ayers?
Yes.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Porter?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Temporary Resolution 57-23 star passes 9-0. Temporary Resolution 58-23.
A resolution authorizing the Service Safety Director to advertise for bids and enter into a contract for the project known as the Chestnut Street Parking Lot, offered by Mr. McDaniel and seconded by Mr. Ailes.
Mr. McDaniel.
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record resolution temporarily numbered 5823.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pass and engross and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 58-23. Discussion, Mr. McDaniel?
As discussed in the Finance Committee meeting, this is related to the Chestnut Street parking lot between PD and the Annex building, and that parking lot is in desperate need of repair, and this cost is not to exceed $450,000.
Thank you very much, Mr. McDaniel. Further discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mr. Ayers?
Yes.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Porter?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Temporary Resolution 58-23 passes 9-0. Temporary Resolution 59-23.
A resolution expanding and modifying the terms and tax exemptions of the Community Investment Area, CRA number 3, and declaring an emergency, offered by Mr. Ailes and seconded by Mr. Porter.
Mr. Ailes.
Yes, Mr. President, I move that we pass and engross and enter upon the written record resolution temporarily numbered 59-23.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pass and engross and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 59-23. Discussion, Mr. Ailes.
No.
Discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mr. Ayers?
Yes.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Porter?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Temporary Resolution 59-23 passes 9-0. We now have second reading on a series of resolutions, beginning with the second reading of Temporary Resolution 60-23.
A resolution to appropriate from the unencumbered balance in the Sanitation Fund 6005 and to amend the Certificate of Appropriations with the Fairfield County Auditor, offered by Mr. Porter and seconded by Mr. Matlin.
Mr. Porter.
Second of three readings.
Second of three readings on Temporary Resolution 60-23. Temporary Resolution 61-23.
A resolution to increase receipts and appropriations from the unencumbered balance and amend the certificate with the county auditor and the Bond Retirement Fund 4013, offered by Mr. McDaniel and seconded by Mrs. Kreitz.
Mr. McDaniel.
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council suspend its rules and waive the third reading of temporary resolution 6123.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and waive the third reading of Temporary Resolution 61-23. Discussion on the motion, Mr. McDaniel.
Yes, this is a requirement from the from the IRS that we must put any any interest earned towards the principal of our. This was our street sweeper master lease agreement. It's $163.80, but we have to pass this legislation to allow us to comply with IRS requirements.
Thank you very much. Further discussion on the motion to suspend? Please call the roll.
Mr. Ayers?
Yes.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Porter?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Motion to suspend carries 9-0. Mr. McDaniel.
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record resolution temporarily numbered 6123.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 61-23. Discussion, Mr. McDaniel?
Nothing further.
Discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mr. Ayers?
Yes.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Porter?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Temporary resolution 61-23 passes 9-0. Temporary resolution 62-23.
A resolution authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into a contract for construction of the 2023 sewer rehabilitation project, offered by Mr. James and seconded by Mr. Matlin.
Mr. James.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is the second of 3 readings.
Second to 3 readings on temporary resolution 62-23. Temporary resolution 63-23.
A resolution to appropriate from the unencumbered balance and amend the certificate with the county auditor in the City Income Tax Fund 2016, offered by Mr. McDaniel and seconded by Mrs. Kreitz.
Mr. McDaniel.
Second of 3 readings.
Second to 3 readings then on temporary resolution 63-23. Temporary resolution 64-23.
A resolution to appropriate from the unencumbered balance in the General Fund 1001 and to amend the certificate of appropriations with the Fairfield County Auditor, offered by Mr. McDaniel and seconded by Mr. Ailes.
Mr. McDaniel.
Second of 3 readings.
Second to 3 readings on temporary resolution 64-23. Temporary resolution.
Okay, I'm sorry. Forgive me, I had it was 2 readings. My fault.
Sorry.
Okay, next one.
65, right?
Yes.
Yep, 65-23, please.
A resolution authorizing the Service Safety Director to advertise for bids and enter into a contract for the construction of the AHA Trails Project, offered by Mr. Porter and seconded by Mr. Matlin.
Mr. Porter.
Second of 3 readings.
Second to 3 readings on temporary resolution 65-23. We now have first reading on a series of resolutions, beginning with 66-23.
A resolution authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into an engineering agreement for engineering design for the concentrate line upgrades, offered by Mr. James and seconded by Mrs. Teener.
Mr. James.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is the first of 2 readings.
First of 2 readings on temporary resolution 66-23. Temporary resolution 67-23.
A resolution authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into construction contracts for the lateral D trunk sewer Phase 2 and the Campground Road Pump Station and Force Main, offered by Mr. James and seconded by Mr. Matlin.
Mr. James.
Thank you once again, Mr. President. This is the first of 2 readings.
First 2 readings on temporary resolution 67-23. Temporary resolution 68-23.
A resolution approving the City of Lancaster's fiscal year 2023 Community Development Block Grant Annual Action Plan and Statement of Objectives, and authorizing their submission to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, offered by Mr. Ailes and seconded by Mr. Schoonover.
Mr. Ailes.
First of 3 readings.
First of 3 readings on temporary resolution 68-23. Temporary resolution 69-23.
A resolution to appropriate from the unencumbered balance and amend the certificate with the county auditor in the General Fund 1001 for the Chestnut Street Parking Lot Project, offered by Mr. McDaniel and seconded by Mrs. Kreitz.
Mr. McDaniel.
First of 2 readings.
First of 2 readings on temporary resolution 69-23. Temporary resolution 70-23.
A resolution authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into a contract for professional design services, construction bid preparation, and construction inspection services for the Lancaster Police Department's HVAC replacement project and to declare an emergency, offered by Mr. Matlin, seconded by Mr. James.
Mr. Matlin.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council suspend its rules and waive the second and third reading of temporary resolution 70-23.
I will second that motion.
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and waive the second and third reading of temporary resolution 70-23. Mr. Matlin.
Yeah, I'm asking for suspension because the situation's been going on too long and we need to get moving on it. And hopefully they found an avenue to find someone that can fix their HVAC problem.
Thank you very much. Further discussion on the motion to suspend. Please call the roll.
Mr. Ayers?
Yes.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Porter?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Motion to suspend carries 9-0. Mr. Matlin.
Mr. President, I make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 70-23.
I will second that motion.
We have a motion and a second to pass and gross and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 70-23. Further discussion, Mr. Mallon?
Yes, again, this is advertising for bids to get a professional design service to design a new HVAC system for the police station, which has not worked, did not work all last summer and will not work this summer, and we're using a temporary system. The money is already budgeted in the 2023 budget for this.
Thank you very much. Further discussion on the motion to pass? Please call the roll.
Mr. Ayers?
Yes.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Porter?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Temporary resolution 70-23 passes 9-0. Are there any further resolutions to come before Lancaster City Council? If not, we'll move to the reading of ordinances, beginning with the third reading of temporary ordinance 12-23.
An ordinance to authorize and designate a revitalization district within the city of Lancaster pursuant to Ohio Revised Code, Section 430181, offered by Mr. Ailes and seconded by Mr. McDaniel.
Mr. Ailes.
Mr. President, I move that we pass and engross and enter upon the written record ordinance temporarily numbered 12-23.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pass and gross and enter upon the written record temporary ordinance 12-23. Discussion, Mr. Ailes.
Just a small thing that we can do as a council to keep the momentum going in downtown Lancaster. I'd love to see it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Further discussion on the motion to pass? All right, please call the roll.
Mr. Ayers?
Yes.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Porter?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Temporary ordinance 12-23 passes 9-0. We have second reading now on temporary ordinance 13-23.
An ordinance to amend permanent ordinance 37-22, repeal and replace existing permanent ordinance 37-22, and to declare an emergency for the non-union pay ordinance, offered by Mr. McDaniel, seconded by Mrs. Kreitz.
Mr. McDaniel.
Second of three readings.
Second of three readings on temporary ordinance 13-23. Are there any other ordinances to come before Lancaster City Council this evening? If not, is there any action on tabled legislation tonight? Seeing none, we'll move to unfinished business. Does anyone have any unfinished business they would like to discuss this evening? I see the mayor pulling the microphone down there. Do you have something, Mr. Mallon? Go ahead.
I'm not sure it's the right place. I'll address Ms. Norris about her bamboo issue on King Street. I apologize. I thought code enforcement had dealt with it, and apparently they had them cut it down. If you don't know, people plant species of bamboo because it grows fast, it makes a nice privacy fence, but it's considered an invasive species. And when it starts growing, it doesn't stop growing. So I think Ms. Hall is who helped the code enforcement figure out that they had a way to enforce getting rid of it, but I'm not sure it's working. And she's not wrong that once it starts growing, it's going to be into everything. So I'll be looking into it. Unfortunately, we work at the speed of government, which is not fast. So I don't know how we can, it's a sad thing, but that's what happens here. So like I said, I apologize. I thought it was taken care of.
Thank you, Mr.
We're
Mallon.
working on it.
Yeah, well, so continue to follow up with Mr. Mallon. I encourage you also to connect with the Service Safety Director, Mr. Martin over here, who may be able to help you out as well, ma'am. Okay? Yes, Ms. Tina.
I did want to ask a question. I don't know if this is something, and Stephanie, you could, if there are certain things though that you are not able to grow, is there any way that you, because I know wisteria is another one that will take off and it just goes everywhere. And bamboo is just one of those things I read one time as to, because somebody had asked it, I mean, you literally pretty much have to dig down and build a cement barrier to keep it from coming over. That's how bad it is. And is there anything that we can prevent certain things from being grown in the city of Lancaster? Because that might be something we need to talk about law committee.
Yes, we absolutely can, and we already have a mechanism to do that. If you pass the new zoning, planning and zoning ordinance, it's built into that. So the way we did it this time is the International Property Maintenance Code actually references whatever the local Department of Nature and Wildlife wants to do. So ODNR has banned bamboo, specific species of bamboo, and then specific species of trees and other plants. And that's how we enforce it presently. But the new zoning code will include in the landscaping section a portion on the species that are considered invasive and will not be allowed to be grown in the city of Lancaster.
Thank you very much. Okay, so please continue to follow up with these folks, and they'll continue to work with you. Yeah, I understand. Okay. Anyone else have unfinished business this evening? Mr. James.
Just quickly, I'd like to piggyback on what Mr. Bizjack said. I've been contacted by some persons in River Valley Highlands, specifically on Landcrest, where some of the boring that was taking place, first of all, they were not notified of any kind of boring. They did stay within all of the right-of-ways, which I had a chance to speak with our city employee, Mr. Cecil Haynes. He monitors all that, but the particular contractor is actually a subcontractor to the subcontractor. Horizon is your top contractor. I'm glad to see them coming to give Spectrum and some other service offerings some competition. I think it's a good thing. But we also need to make sure that the contractor, the third level, Thayer's the other main contractor working for Horizon. They subcontracted with American Boring. American Boring utilizes a lot of non-English speaking persons, and when they were confronted, or at least by this particular homeowner, they couldn't get any communication going at all. And I know that boring is pretty critical because you have to do a whole lot of locating before you start down that road. It's my understanding that they broke a water line of Mr. McDaniel's.
They did.
In the process. So I think we just need to make sure that we as a city hold their feet to the fire and make sure that they do repair all the damage that they've done.
Thank you, Mr. James. Further unfinished business this evening, Mr. McDaniel.
I would just add that they did repair it very quickly. As a matter of fact, it was hours, and Mr. Martin and the water department helped with that, but they were very attentive and did repair it very quickly. It was an inconvenience, but thank goodness it wasn't too long.
Okay, so are we keeping an eye on these folks, Mr. Martin? We got this under control?
Well, my lead is Cecil Haynes, our right-of-way manager, and it's a conversation I had with him today, but the mayor might have some comments here as well.
So, yes, first of all, we held them up about 6 months in doing this project to make sure they complied with all of our rules and requests. But we will be back in touch with them. I have the contact information, and I will be on the phone with them first thing tomorrow morning to make them aware of these issues, which haven't come up until just recently.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Anything else on this or other unfinished business this evening? All right, anyone have new business this evening? Mr. Mayor.
Yes, you'll all find in front of you a nice fat notebook, which is our new zoning code. The notebook will include the new zoning code plus the old zoning code. I'm sure you'll find all 109 pages of interesting reading, and we've made it a little bit easier since we've included lots of pictures and diagrams. So it's a lot easier to understand, not only for council members, but for the general public and contractors and those who are using it. It will be introduced next council meeting, and certainly we'll ask for 3 readings, and I believe there's a public hearing that will be included with that. The Planning Commission had their public hearing and passed the zoning code unanimously last Thursday, so it's now in your court. It's the result of work going all the way back to October. Many, many hours have been put into arriving at the final product, so we invite your comments and your questions and look forward to discussion at the next meeting.
Legislative melatonin. Right here. Okay, so, but important. And so please work your way through this. Can I ask, what was the result of the public hearing from a proponent-opponent standpoint during the Planning Commission?
There was one comment about the required facing and the roof pitch, and it was decided that those could be addressed through the variance process. So there were no other objections. Some of the Planning Commission members had suggestions which were adopted in the final approval.
Okay. Very good. All right, anyone have any other new business this evening? Very quickly, the president of council has the opportunity to appoint someone to the Tax Incentive Review Committee. That's a committee that works once a year to go over all of the tax incentives that had been received and ensure that there's compliance with that. Mr. Stoughton had been my previous appointee, and he loved it so much that he left office and went over to the treasurer's office. And so I am now going to appoint, and we'll note for the record tonight, Mr. Ailes, who has excitedly accepted this appointment to the Tax Incentive Review Committee, which has a meeting coming up, Ms. Hall. Do you remember the date?
June 21st.
Yeah, it's coming soon.
I believe. Give me just, June 21st at 9 a.m.
Write that down.
June 21st, 9 a.m. location?
1897.
Upstairs conference room of City Hall. Okay, very good. So congratulations. Thank you for your willingness to serve, Mr. Oh, look at that. You get applause and everything.
He didn't tell me I had a choice.
Well, it was voluntold kind of deals, but yes, thank you. Thank you for doing it. All right, other new business. If not, we'll ask the clerk read our announcement of scheduled meetings.
The next meeting of council is June 26th. The meeting following is July 17th at 6:30 PM here in council chambers. Upcoming committee meetings for the next 30 days. Water Pollution, June 14th at 8:30 AM at the 1897 conference room. Finance, June 26th at 6 PM in council chambers here. Code Enforcement, July 10th at 7:30 AM at the 1897 conference room. And finally, the Water Pollution, July 12th at 8:30 AM at the 1897 conference room.
Thank you very much. Are there any bills?
There's one bill payable to PNC for publication of legislation in the MNCO paper in the amount of $93.75.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion, we pay the bill.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pay the bill. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Is there a need for an executive session? Knowing of none, a motion to adjourn is in order.
Mr. President, I'd like to make that motion, we adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you all very much. Please remember to sign your legislation. Have a great week.
I've already read it.